They threw a barbecue on my private lakefront while I was out of town, without asking. The HOA called it community bonding. I call it grand theft waterfront. And by the end of this story, so will you. Ever left town for a week and came back to find strangers grilling ribs on your lawn like they paid rent in hot dogs? I did, and apparently while I was gone, the HOA turned my lakefront into Disneyland with fewer rules and more flip-flops. Ever had your property stolen with smiles and hot dogs? Yeah, it's real. Buckle up. This HOA tale makes Watergate look like a block party. Drop a comment if your HOA's ever pulled some slick nonsense, or if you're just here to watch Queen Karen go down like a glitter-filled Titanic. So picture this. I roll up to my house in Red Clay Bend, thinking maybe a porch nap and a cold beer were in my near future. Instead, I see kids running around like greased-up raccoons, beach chairs I don't own, and a guy doing cannonballs into my lake like it's a public attraction. The audacity was so thick, you could butter toast with it. A boombox blasted ADS rock, someone's uncle was snoring in a hammock I definitely never bought, and Brenda Carlton, our walking infraction in a sundress, was sipping lemonade on my dock like she'd just closed escrow on the whole lake. I stepped out of my truck, stunned, folder of land documents still in the passenger seat. My property deed has more red stamps than a Soviet passport. 30 years I worked for this land. 30. While other people were learning yoga and getting divorced for sport, I was under city streets, fixing burst water mains in December. That lakefront was my reward, my peace, my retirement plan with waves. And now Brenda was hosting a seafood boil on it. I woke up, and before I even get to open my mouth, one of the neighborhood teens throws a water balloon that misses my mailbox by half an inch. Brenda stands up like she's introducing the halftime show and goes, "Oh, Trent, you're back early." Isn't this just lovely? Like she'd been holding a bake sale instead of a full-blown land invasion. I ask her what in the holy pothole is going on, and she points to a wooden sign, hand-painted like a third-grade craft project. Community lake access courtesy of HOA. That sucker was staked right into my dirt, like Columbus had just discovered it. Now here's where it gets wild. She says, "We took a vote while you were away. The neighborhood really needs this." I asked, "A vote on what?" She smiles that toxic Botox smirk and goes, "On sharing your lake access. Don't be selfish." Ma'am, I didn't break my spine for 3 decades so your cousin could build a fire pit on my trout path. I tell her, calmly, politely, like a man with patience and blood pressure medication, "This is private property." She actually clapped her hands like she was swatting at invisible bees and yelled to the crowd, "Ignore him! He's just not used to sharing." "I swear on my grandfather's toolbox," one man cheered. Another shouted, "Karen said it's cool." Who's Karen? That'd be Brenda's alter ego when she switches from lemonade to control-freak margaritas. Same lady, but with more volume and legal threats. She'd gone full HOA warlord and decided while I was getting sunburnt in Arkansas, she'd grant the neighborhood access to what she thought was under her jurisdiction. Never mind that my property deed was clear, surveyed, and notarized with enough official stamps to qualify as currency in most small countries. As I stood there, a hot dog whizzed past my head. Not thrown, just poorly handled. Some kid had tripped over my sprinkler and flung it like a meat missile. I stepped back, took a deep breath, and realized I was officially in a suburban episode of Cops. Only instead of a domestic dispute, it was a turf war over leisure activities. By sundown, I'd counted 4 lawn chairs, 2 unattended children eating pudding on my steps, and 1 man using my bird bath as a foot soak. Meanwhile, Brenda handed out flyers titled "Neighborhood Togetherness, Summer Starts Here," featuring a poorly photoshopped image of my dock with a rainbow over it. The woman had the gall to put my last name under community sponsors. I never gave permission. I didn't even give eye contact, and that's when I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a full-blown HOA-certified heist of my land, and I was about to be the guy who ruined their beach day. If folks are using your lawn like a public park, odds are they've already decided you're the lifeguard. You think this is bad? Wait till Brenda claims she's got a signed petition. And one of the signatures is from her dog. You ever try reasoning with someone who thinks a popsicle stick craft has more legal weight than your notarized deed? That was my Saturday morning. I walked out with my folder of land documents, real ones with stamps and legalese thicker than a church casserole, and asked the crowd to kindly vacate my lawn. A teenage girl flipped her phone camera on me like I was a wildlife documentary and whispered, "Look, he's getting territorial." They didn't just ignore me, they weaponized whimsy. A boy no older than 15 held up Brenda's glitter glue sign like he was presenting the Constitution at a county fair. "It says right here, community access," he declared, shaking the thing so hard glitter dust wafted off like airborne pink lies. A woman in yoga pants shouted, "See, you can't just keep nature to yourself, man." That was when I realized I wasn't dealing with neighbors. I was dealing with cult members high on lemonade and fake legality. I calmly held up my deed and pointed to the map. A man in cargo shorts squinted and asked, "Is that one of those fake PDFs?" That's when Brenda appeared, clipboard in hand and a scarf tied around her neck like she'd just walked off a yacht. In Kansas. "Trent," she cooed, "you have to understand this is bigger than one person." I replied, "Yes, it's called trespassing," she laughed and said, "Oh, stop, you sound like a lawyer." "Ma'am, I was one wrong look away from becoming one." Then came the real kicker. While I was attempting diplomacy, a boy named Aiden, of course his name was Aiden, ran into my hydrangeas, dropped his swim trunks, and gave my landscaping the kind of disrespect usually reserved for roadside mailboxes on Halloween. Brenda didn't flinch. She just sipped her drink and chirped, "You should be grateful we're using it. Lady, it's not a rental tuxedo, it's my land." By noon, I was the villain of the neighborhood Facebook group. Brenda posted a blurry photo of me holding my documents and captioned it, "Some people just don't know how to share." I got tagged in 6 posts with passive-aggressive commentary like, "Community means everyone," and "Old ways die hard." My favorite was "Lake King Dethroned." That one came with a meme of me, photoshopped onto a Game of Thrones throne made entirely of folded lawn chairs. A local teen even made a TikTok remix of me saying, "This is private property," over a trap beat. I went viral, unwillingly. My inbox filled with HOA supporters quoting Brenda like she was Moses handing out commandments. One message read, "Just because it's yours doesn't mean it shouldn't be ours." That's not how ownership works, Tina. So I did what any rational man pushed to the brink would do. I bought a laser pointer and aimed it at Brenda's sign for 4 straight hours, watching the glitter letters melt into drippy pink surrender. Brenda called it property damage. I called it art. We both called the sheriff. Only one of us had documentation. People will call you selfish for not handing them your front porch, especially after they already wiped their flip-flops on your welcome mat. Oh, you think glitter glue and water balloon diplomacy were the peak? Just wait till Brenda brings out the big guns. A Google Doc petition signed by her book club and one confused UPS driver. They say power corrupts, but in Brenda Carlton's case it was more like glitter fumes and a custom clipboard. 2 days after the glitter glue uprising, I got a notice on my front door that looked like it had been printed at a preschool job fair. At the top, in Comic Sans no less, it read, "Official HOA Community Improvement Decree." Right below it, Brenda's logo. Yes, her logo. A swan with a crown and a little property line flag in its beak. Somewhere, Thomas Jefferson just rolled in his grave. According to this decree, the lake access was now permanently community shared, authorized by a vote held on Brenda's patio during Wine and Bylaw Wednesday. The signatories? Her husband, who nodded mid-sip, her cat sitter, who doesn't even live in the zip code, and a guy named Donnie, who later admitted he thought he was signing for a termite inspection. "You signed it?" Brenda chirped when I called her out. "That means you support it." "I was signing for my bug problem," Donnie replied. "Exactly," she smiled. "And now it's our problem." She didn't stop there. Brenda organized a live-streamed ribbon-cutting ceremony like she was unveiling the Hoover Dam. There were cupcakes, tiki torches, folding chairs in neat rows, and a homemade banner that read, "Uniting the Shores, a Brenda initiative." I watched it from my window like a man observing his own car being raffled off by strangers. Brenda stood on my property in a sundress and pearls, holding a novelty-sized pair of scissors like she was about to open a grand casino. "Today," she announced into her ring light, "we dedicate this access in the spirit of togetherness." And then she snipped a ribbon strung between two solar-powered garden flamingos that, yes, were also mine. What followed was part sermon, part campaign rally, part clown convention. Brenda thanked herself 7 times, praised her support team, read the neighborhood wine club, and called my reaction unfortunate but predictable. Then she took a bite out of a cupcake with blue icing that said, HOA Hero. I wasn't sure if I was witnessing ego or a one-woman telethon. Meanwhile, her husband DJ'd from a Bluetooth speaker blasting "We Are Family" like irony had taken a personal day. But Brenda's true talent wasn't party planning, it was narrative control. By sundown, there were photos all over the HOA Facebook page. Brenda handing out juice boxes, Brenda shaking hands with toddlers, Brenda squinting into the sun like she was contemplating world peace. In every post, I was either cropped out or blurred like a Bigfoot sighting. The captions read, "So proud of our community spirit." And thanks to Brenda for making lakefront dreams a reality. Never mind that the lakefront was still legally 100% mine. I called Brenda. She didn't answer. Instead, she sent a voice message that said, "Trent, you can't stand in the way of progress forever. It's just water." Just water. The same way your house is just wood, your paycheck just numbers, and your kidneys just beans. The woman had weaponized entitlement with the precision of a drone strike. Majority rule is a beautiful thing. Until the majority turns out to be 3 wine moms and a confused exterminator signing on a patio. Brenda thinks she's queen of the cul-de-sac. Wait until you see what happens when I start building my castle. With legal blueprints and a plaque that makes her pearls clutch like a gasping possum. You ever walk into a room knowing it's a trap, but go anyway just to see how bad they rigged it? That was me, walking into the Red Clay Bend HOA emergency meeting wearing my nicest flannel and a grin made of barbed wire. Brenda, or as she now called herself, acting chairwoman of shared resources, had summoned the neighborhood for what she called a community reckoning. I figured I'd be burned in effigy or fined for unauthorized facial expressions. I wasn't wrong. The folding chairs were arranged like a courtroom, except the only bar was the wine cooler Brenda brought herself. She stood up front with a projector, a clicker, and the self-importance of someone about to pitch the worst TED Talk ever. Today's meeting, she declared, concerns one man's reluctance to embrace the sacred spirit of neighborly cooperation. That man, yours truly. Apparently my cedar fence had disrupted communal joy, crippled spontaneous aquatic bonding, and, my personal favorite, radiated hostility. My fence doesn't even have Wi-Fi. I don't know how it radiates anything. Then came the threat. Brenda clicked to a slide labeled HOA Resolution 14D. Her voice sharpened like a steak knife soaked in vinegar. We are issuing a fine of $100,000 plus legal fees for unauthorized infrastructure obstructing communal resources. I blinked. My cedar fence was now classified as an international crime scene. Somewhere in Brussels, someone probably thought I was blocking a UN peacekeeping force from reaching the lake. But the universe has a sense of humor, and his name is Jimmy, a teenager with too much time and a Bluetooth speaker. Right as Brenda launched into her 8th paragraph about toxic territorial behavior, barnyard noises began playing over the sound system. First, a pig squeal, then a rooster, then a cow's moo so realistic Brenda paused and looked around like livestock had invaded her PowerPoint. "Who thinks this is funny?" she shrieked. "This is a legal proceeding!" That only encouraged the chaos. Jimmy moved the speaker behind different chairs, so Brenda was chasing phantom farm animals around the room while still trying to look like a dignified authority figure. Folks were snorting into their sleeves. One guy dropped his vape, trying not to laugh. And then came the final blow, not from me but from one of her own allies. Mrs. Elderby, the longtime treasurer with the personality of a decorative lamp, stood up trembling. Where's "The HOA money, Brenda?" she asked. Just 5 words, but they cracked the room like thunder. Brenda froze, her face turned like a traffic light. Green for denial, yellow for panic, red for rage. And just like that, the Court of Karens turned into an episode of Law & Order Suburbia Unit. When the HOA starts quoting bylaws like scripture and handing out fines like parking tickets, remember, there's always one goat in the audience, ready to bleat. If you've never been to an HOA meeting that started with scripture and ended with Bluetooth barn animals, then friend, you ain't lived in Red Clay Bend. Brenda strutted into the community hall dressed like a judge, preacher, and cruise director all rolled into one. She opened the meeting with what she called a moment of communal clarity and what I called a dramatic sigh that lasted 30 seconds too long. Her PowerPoint title? Restoring Shared Joy. Dismantling division one fence at a time. Catchy, almost poetic, if it wasn't a formal attempt to bulldoze my cedar masterpiece. She clicked to her first slide, a pixelated image of my fence with the words, "A symbol of greed," typed in Comic Sans. You could hear the collective judgment like a sneeze in church. Brenda read her proposed amendment like she was handing down the 10 Commandments of suburban living. "Thou shalt not block thy neighbor's view. We propose mandatory removal of all visual barriers that impede collective enjoyment," she announced, as if my fence was committing a hate crime against sunlight. Then came the fines, enforcement clauses, and a bonus clause for HOA-controlled mediation, which smelled like legal arson. Hugh Arthur Sterling, my lawyer, retired Marine, part-time beekeeper, and full-time bulldozer in a suit. Arthur stood up, slow as a sunrise, and calmly laid out the facts. Property lines, deed copies, zoning code 624B, which apparently scared even Brenda, and case law so dry it made half the audience reach for bottled water. Your amendment holds the same legal weight as a napkin note in a middle school locker, he said flatly, flipping through documents like he was dealing blackjack. Brenda blinked twice like she'd just been hit with an encyclopedia. "He's wrong," she hissed. "He's misinterpreting the communal spirit clause." Arthur smiled, folded his arms, and simply said, "Then sue me." And that's when the cows came home. Literally. Somewhere in the back, a Bluetooth speaker let out a muh so heartfelt it echoed off the water-stained ceiling tiles. Then came the chickens. Then a goat. The audio loop was flawless. Every time Brenda raised her voice, another farm animal chimed in like backup singers from a country music fever dream. Folks were shaking, shoulders bouncing with suppressed laughter. Brenda stomped her heels and bellowed, "Who brought the barnyard?" At that exact moment, the rooster crowed. That bird's timing deserved an Emmy. But the real twist wasn't audio. It was blood. Brenda's own blood. Mrs. Elderby, the soft-spoken treasurer with a collection of ceramic angels and a suspicious tolerance for HOA wine tasting, stood up, trembling but clear. "Where's the HOA money, Brenda?" she asked. That room turned colder than my iced tea in January. Brenda froze, lips parted like she just saw her Botox bill posted on the bulletin board. Even the goats went silent. Someone dropped a cookie. The whole meeting deflated like a sad parade balloon. Because here's the thing, when even the lady who defended Brenda's Christmas newsletter font turns on her, you know the dam's about to break. Power built on potluck votes and glitter glue petitions crumbles the minute receipts come out, and crumble it does. The next part cracks the ledger, unearths 2 maps, and features a voice memo Brenda never wanted played in public. Stick around, hit like and comment if your HOA's ever turned into a barnyard brawl, because next up, we're digging deep into the dirt, and trust me, it ain't compost. Mildred Jenkins doesn't just keep receipts. She binds them, alphabetizes them, and stores them in a fireproof cabinet labeled Future I Told You So's. When she slid that folder across her Formica table like it was a royal decree, I knew 2 things. 1, Brenda was cooked, and 2, I was about to witness paperwork become a weapon of mass HOA destruction. Inside were invoices, suspicious signatures, and 2 different neighborhood maps. The older one, pre-attorney, county-sealed and dated, clearly showed my property reaching the lake. The new one? Conveniently redrawn to include Community Lake Access 1, right where my fence stood. Brenda had apparently gone full Sharpie on government documents, but the pièce de résistance was a voice memo titled May_7_Scheme MP3. And yes, Mildred had labeled it with the date, because of course she had. We played it in her kitchen first, both of us sipping lukewarm coffee while Brenda's voice echoed off the ceramic roosters above the sink. We'll just label it public. Once the fence comes down, they'll never know the difference. She said, followed by laughter that sounded like a villain falling into a vat of unpaid taxes. She was speaking with someone named Sterling, likely the developer who drove a Tesla but thought property lines were subjective. They laid it all out. Devalue the land, stir up community support, then flip the area to a lakeside resort plan Brenda just happened to be championing at City Hall. Now, I could have lawyered up, gone quiet, and let this play out in dusty courtrooms, but that wouldn't be satisfying, would it? So we called a town hall. Full crowd, folding chairs creaking. Brenda walked in with sunglasses on like a celebrity hiding from paternity results. She strutted to the podium and opened with, "We gather here to discuss peaceful resolution." But peace got shoved out the back door when I hit play on the Bluetooth speaker and Brenda's own voice filled the room louder than a Baptist solo. "Once it's public, it's ours. He can't fight everyone." Gasps rippled. One woman dropped her casserole dish. Mildred gave me a wink so sharp it could have sliced through HOA bylaws. Brenda lunged forward, shrieking, "That's not me," while wearing the exact same Argyle sweater from the recording. Same inflection, same guilt-marinated tone. A kindergartner could have ID'd her. People started whispering like it was a live courtroom drama, only with better snacks. Mr. Vargas, who never talked louder than a lawnmower, stood up and muttered, "She lied to all of us." Then came the questions. "Where's the money, Brenda? But developer, why did the maps change? And, most damning of all, is that even your real hair?" The myth of Brenda Carlton began to crumble, one spreadsheet at a time. You can't gaslight a neighborhood when Mildred's packing audio files and 30 years of grudges. And just when you think Brenda's cornered, she pulls out a new trick. Emergency bylaws, a fake lawyer, and a goat named Pickles. The meeting started with a buffet and ended with a mutiny. Brenda had called an emergency session of the HOA, which in HOA language means time to fake a vote and hope nobody asks questions. But the moment I saw Mrs. Dunlop carrying in a 3-layer Jell-O salad and Mildred Jenkins walking tall in orthopedic sandals, I knew Brenda's days were numbered. Even her husband looked like he'd rather be in witness protection than in that folding chair. The only thing holding Brenda's fake kingdom together was duct tape, denial, and a dwindling supply of butter cookies. Brenda kicked things off with what she called a final effort to restore community order. She motioned toward me with one of her French-tipped claws and bellowed, "This fence must come down immediately. It represents division, not unity." Meanwhile, behind her, 2 kids were sword-fighting with plastic spoons and someone's dog was licking all the frosting off the HOA cupcakes. Brenda dramatically unveiled a new bylaw that she claimed had emergency approval. It gave her unilateral power to override property rights in cases of spiritual disharmony. I'm not kidding, she used those words like she was cleansing my cedar fence with essential oils and a seance. I stood up slow, like an old gunslinger brushing the dust off his boots. "That's funny," I said, "because I brought some spiritual disharmony of my own." I handed Arthur the mic, and he presented a neat little folder full of documentation. HOA disbursement ledgers showing repeated payments to a landscaping company owned by, wait for it, Brenda's cousin Carl, the same Carl who once spray-painted his own name on a riding mower. The room went dead silent. Then Mr. Vargas leaned forward and said, "So, we paid Carl to mulch what already grew here?" Brenda's face turned from peach to plum to someone call a medic. She stammered, "These are standard operating expenses for neighborhood aesthetic harmony." But nobody was buying it anymore. Mildred stood and said, I move to appoint an interim president until a full investigation can be conducted. Every hand went up, except Brenda's and possibly her husband's, though he seemed busy deleting search history. In a 47-3 landslide, Brenda was voted out and replaced by the woman who alphabetized crime scenes for fun. As a final act, I handed the police a flash drive labeled Mapgate. They nodded, stood, and quietly asked Brenda to come with them for a few clarifications. She shrieked, "This is a witch hunt!" and I said, "Ma'am, if the broom fits." As they led her out, her glittery HOA badge hit the linoleum floor with a sound that echoed like karma in surround sound. The crowd didn't cheer. They just exhaled, as if the whole community had been holding its breath under Brenda's rule. Someone started slicing potato salad. Kids resumed spoon duels. The neighborhood didn't just flip leadership. It remembered what it felt like to belong to itself again. When your power's propped up by lies and family discounts, all it takes is one honest neighbor with a spreadsheet to bring your empire down. Coming up next, fences become symbols, trees grow where lies once stood, and a handmade bench gets its long overdue sunrise. Don't miss the final chapter, where we trade HOA nonsense for legacy and laughter. Like, comment if your neighborhood's ever pulled a 180, and subscribe if you believe revenge is best served cedar planked. You know peace is returned to a neighborhood when the loudest sound is the hum of a weed trimmer and not a woman screaming, "This is a violation of Section 12." Brenda was gone, booted with the flair of a daytime soap villain. But the real healing didn't start until the signs came down. I'm not talking about just the crooked community lake access sign she hammered into my soul. I mean the emotional graffiti she left behind: paranoia, control, forced bake sales, and an HOA suggestion box that somehow always lost your suggestion. That Monday the whole neighborhood met at sunrise, not for war, for something better. Mildred Jenkins, now HOA president and local folk hero, stood beside me with a shovel in one hand and a laminated budget in the other. "Today," she said, "we plant the justice tree." We all clapped like we'd just witnessed the fall of a dictator, because in some very American, very neighborhood way, we had. That oak sapling went right where Brenda's sign used to sit, like nature itself was issuing an apology. Kids brought hand-painted rocks. Old man Vargas brought lemonade spiked with something that made him smile more than usual. Someone passed around leftover potato salad. Peace, it turns out, tastes like mustard and cold celery. Then came my bench. My father's old handmade cedar bench that had sat in the garage through every season of my life, waiting for the right place to rest again. I planted it right at the edge of the lake, just past my fence line, facing east where the sun rises like a second chance. On it, I placed a hand-carved plaque that read, "Stolen once, never again." Every letter was etched with the care of a man who'd had to earn his quiet the hard way. That bench isn't just wood. It's a sermon. A warning, a front-row seat to justice served cold, cedar-smoked, and HOA-free. Brenda's house went on the market within a week. Her listing read, "Charming home near strong-willed neighbors." She moved out at night, probably to avoid anyone making eye contact with her shame. Her husband drove the U-Haul like he was fleeing a crime scene, which, if you ask Mildred, wasn't entirely inaccurate. And just like that, the air changed. Kids played on their side of the property lines, neighbors waved without looking over their shoulder, and I, just a guy who wanted to fish in peace, became a very unlikely symbol of standing your ground with a smile and a stack of legal documents. Your property is more than land, it's your legacy, your labor, and the fence between you and tyranny disguised as neighborly concern. You don't have to yell to win. Sometimes the strongest revenge is silence, measured wood, and a plaque that says, "Try me again." If that brought you joy, justice, or just a laugh, like this video, drop a comment with your wildest HOA moment and hit subscribe, because next time a woman tries to evict a rainbow for violating neighborhood color codes, trust me, you don't want to miss that one. So if this story made you laugh, made you think, or made you shout amen at your phone screen, do me a favor. Hit that like button, leave a comment about the craziest HOA story you've witnessed or survived, and subscribe, because the next story might just be yours. Got your own HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. Let's laugh at the madness together, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story.